Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Games We Played podcast, where I, your host, Brian Brindley, break down some news and topics from the past week all about the games we play. That encompasses almost everything since, as an SNL skit once aptly put it, life is a game that plays us. Today on the docket, I'm going to address why EA may have pushed me to not purchase their games anymore, Cody Bellinger, and the NBA. Without further ado, let's get started. Electronic Arts is essentially trying to weasel its way out of responsibility for indoctrinating young gamers into gambling with loot boxes, rebranding it to surprise mechanics instead of loot boxes because they fully well know that the gaming world at large hates loot boxes. So, for my listeners who aren't very much into gaming, this topic sadly isn't going to be very much for you, but I think that it's an important thing to address. Basically, what a loot box is the idea behind them at first was in a free-to-play game where you purchase it for free on either the App Store or the PlayStation Store, Xbox Live, wherever you're purchasing it. You have no cost to entry because the game doesn't cost any money. So what the next step would be is, well, how do you monetize it? You have to have developers make this game. How are they going to make money? The trade-off for not having a buy-in price of what's usually around $60, you would instead have things that you could buy, like skins for your character, how your character looks, or a certain gun or something like that. Skins are the most likely thing. There's skins for guns, there's different camos you can put on guns, there's different skins you can put on characters. And basically the idea behind a loot box is they put skins and they put tags and all these different kind of things, voice lines, into a random generated number. And you can purchase a loot box for however many dollars, depends on the game, with real money, not in-game money that you're earning, with real money. And it's essentially a gamble. There was a big scandal, I think it was a couple of years ago, might have been less than that, where a couple of YouTubers, T. Martin and Pro Syndicate, got in a big controversy because they actually owned a website where they would gamble for Counter-Strike Global Offensive skins, and they got in a lot of trouble because they owned a gambling site that they were just kind of advertising on their channel and not disclosing that they were the owners of said websites. So it's a big issue, and it's cropped up again because for those of you that don't know the history with EA, when Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out last year, there was a big hubbub about how the game was being monetized. It's a $60 full price game. It's a game that a lot of people were looking forward to, especially because the first Battlefront that they put out, well, the new Battlefront that they put out 4 years ago, I bought and I played, and there was a really good foundation of a game there. It wasn't finished by any sense of the imagination. It was very surface level. I didn't feel like it was worth the money that I paid for it. But Battlefront 2 was supposed to be like them making good on that promise, but they apparently were really, really bad with the loot boxes, really bad with randomly generated content. It would take forever to get certain characters like Darth Vader. It would take a ton of time to be able to play as him, but you could speed up that process by buying points in a loot box, basically. And keep in mind, it'd be different, I feel, and I still don't agree with either way that they monetize it. So there's loot boxes, and then there's just in-game purchases. Technically, the loot box is an in-game purchase, but when I think of an in-game purchase, I think of something like you can purchase points to level up your character. A loot box is completely random. It's a randomly generated number, basically. You're just gambling at that point. And as you could probably tell, the issue with a video game that is rated teen, so that is, I believe, 13 and up, you are allowed to purchase it by yourself. You don't need a parent, is that you are running the risk of kids being able to gamble with their parents' credit card and getting them into the mindset of a gambler, which is anybody who's dealt with somebody with gambling addiction knows that is a horrifying prospect to put on somebody that's that young. It's a real issue. And so EA actually was testifying in front of Parliament, I believe. Let me look that up really quick. They were testifying in front of Parliament, and they basically have... The term loot box is very widely known amongst gamers. You kind of understand that a loot box is generally viewed as a negative thing, which makes sense because it's essentially getting kids into gambling. So not a surprise they're trying to get off of that label, but they really can't because they've tweeted tweets within the last month with E3, which is the big video game conference, they said that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was not going to have loot boxes. But what they did in front of Parliament was they said, we don't like the term loot boxes. We like the term surprise mechanics, which, yes, essentially that is the same thing. Like a loot box is a surprise mechanic, but that's not what you're calling it. And you're purposely not calling it a loot box because that's a negative term associated with it. And you want to basically dodge all responsibility and culpability that you have as a company, which is really infuriating to me because already video game companies get away with everything. They have abusive work practices, they excessively monetize, and there's just a lot of problems with how the industry is run on a business to, from the top management level to the ground floor. There is horrible chemistry and horrible communication between departments, and this is just another thing that makes your upper management look bad. And I know that there was basically they pulled a move to try and save their name where I think it was executives are not taking bonuses at EA because their big game of the year Anthem didn't sell well, so they're not going to take bonuses. But it rings a little bit hollow when we know what kind of things that EA's upper management was doing to the BioWare staff who made Anthem due to that article that came out on Kotaku that Jason Schreier wrote. I'll link that in the description. So yeah. That reaches me to the point of this. That was kind of nitty gritty, but what is this actually going to do for me in EA? So the last EA game that I purchased is Madden 19. That's where I kind of struggle when it comes to this. I want to be able to put my money where my mouth is, and I don't even purchase that many EA games, but there's games I'm looking forward to. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'm looking forward to that because I love Star Wars games. I didn't purchase Battlefront 2, and I'm glad I didn't due to the whole fiasco it went through, but I'm always up for a story-driven Star Wars game. Obviously, the Force Unleashed games were really fun to play. Knights of the Old Republic is a classic, a modern classic, but even it goes down to FIFA and Madden. Like, EA owns some of the biggest titles in the world, and I want to be able to play the new FIFA and play the new Madden, but I can't with good conscience purchase a game made by a company who is this sleazy and is this slimy about how it's handling its PR. It refuses to just take responsibility for what is basically understood by everybody involved to be a massive mistake by your company, and not being able to face the music and say, we might have screwed this up. We might have got a little greedy, and we apologize. Obviously, they're not going to do that because they're a company, and companies can never fess up to the fact that they made a mistake, let alone in front of a parliamentary procedure. But it's unfortunate for me because I have seen companies, at least on the community side, recognize their mistakes and say, look, we made a mistake. I look at Hello Games and No Man's Sky for that, for example. No Man's Sky, when it came out, was a disaster. It was a PR disaster. There were lies told by the development staff. There was false promises in advertising. But that team has worked really, really hard to salvage their name with the public. Maybe not in a court of law. If they went to a court of law, I'm sure they would have argued just like EA is in front of Parliament right now. But at least Hello Games, when they made their mistake with No Man's Sky, went to the public and said, we made a mistake. We're going to work on this, and we are willing to really try to save our name, and they've done it. They haven't just promised it and then given up on the roadmap halfway through. So I'm in a really tricky position. I don't think I can, in good faith, purchase any of EA's titles anymore unless they really make a real effort to address this within the community and stop these practices. Because the other thing that's a key, and I think it's something that Jim Sterling, another YouTuber, has touched on, is when they go on stage, when EA or Ubisoft or whoever goes on stage and they're like, there's no loot boxes, and they get applause. That shouldn't be applauded. That should be a basic thing that's not in your game. If you are charging $60 for a game, you shouldn't put gambling mechanics that are heavily incentivized to games that are sold to children. That's just inexcusable to me. It makes me not have faith in your company. It makes me not want to buy your products. So I'm going to really have to sit on it, and I really don't think I can purchase any more EA games until this issue is really addressed or it's gone for a substantial amount of time, because obviously, as I mentioned earlier, they said Jedi Fallen Order is not going to have loot boxes or anything in it. Okay, cool. What about Madden? What about FIFA? What about all these other games that you have? Are you going to put those gambling mechanics in those as well? It's even worse for those games because Madden and FIFA are rated E for everyone. Anybody can go and purchase those games. So we'll see how that ends up going. I would love to know your guys' opinion on the whole thing, whether you're in the video game scene or not. What do you guys think of EA's business practices? From what I've told you, obviously do some more research because I can only give you so much information. But based on what you know about the situation, what do you think you would do if you were in my position? Would you purchase their games still and hope for the best, or would you stop purchasing them until they fix it? Would you just not purchase their games anymore, period, out of principle? I would love to know your guys' opinion on that. Transitioning into the next topic, I was actually at a Arizona Diamondbacks game. I'm based out of Phoenix, for those of you that don't know, and I went on, I believe it was Monday? Yes, Monday night when they played the Dodgers. A great game. Greinke, and obviously I get to see Greinke against Kershaw. That's an awesome day for me. With a couple buddies. Just had a great time. It was a really fun game, and me and my buddies had a really good time. But there was something that happened toward the end of the game that really, really grinded my gears. And I think you guys all know what it is because it's basically national news at this point. For the second night in a row, a fan ran onto the field at Dodgers outfielder Cody Bellinger and basically approached him, and I think she was trying to get a selfie, if I remember correctly. And I just want to address it for everybody to hear my opinion on it, because on Twitter I've been very vocal about it, and I think I want to break it down in a little more detail here. The biggest problem that I have with it is just on a human level. You would not do that to any other person at any other profession. You would leave them alone. It's disrespectful to his profession, and just because he's an athlete and some people think that, oh, well, they get paid millions of dollars, so they have to interact with fans. That's not true at all. He is contractually obligated to play the game of baseball and to address the media at times. That is what he's contractually obligated to do. You do not get to run onto a field. You don't get to approach him even in public. If he was walking around the streets, you don't get to approach him and harass him just because you know who he is and you bought his jersey. That's entitlement, as much entitlement as I've ever seen in my entire life. And then the other big issue I have with it is, let's flip around the sexes for a second. Let's say that you're at a U.S. women's national team game, since they're playing right now in the Women's World Cup. And let's say you're a guy and you have a big crush on Alex Morgan. You think she's beautiful. Can you imagine the reaction from the media and from fans if a man ran onto the field when Alex Morgan was playing and ran up to her and got a selfie with her and approached her when she was doing her job? Rightfully, everybody would be furious, and I would be too. This is not even really about the gender. I just make that comparison because I feel like it needs to be addressed. Because, in my opinion, unfortunately, people look at it as, oh, it's just a girl being crazy, and he's a cute guy, which that's not true. There's plenty of girls who were at that game. I was there. There's plenty of girls at that game who probably think Cody Bellinger is one of the handsomest men alive because he's a good-looking dude and he's a great baseball player. But they were able to keep themselves composed. And that gets into the final part of what I hate about this, the way that the media and that fans are reacting to this. I've been at multiple games where people have run onto the field and disrupted play. It's annoying most of the time. In a very rare occasion, it's funny. But the reason why it's happened 3 straight times to Cody Bellinger is because that first girl that did it at Dodger Stadium. They put videos up. Barstool Sports is making posts about her. Everybody's making a meme out of her. It's attention. It's what drives everybody on the internet. It's attention. And at what point are we going to get to, as a society, where we realize that all anybody's looking for is publicity? And maybe I'm guilty of it too in addressing it. And as I said on Twitter, it's very hard for me to address this topic because on one hand, I don't want to because I want it to end. But on the other hand, I feel like it needs to be addressed in a more serious manner because the conversation that's taking place around it basically amounts to Barstool Sports and meme accounts posting her on Twitter. And it's kind of baffling to me that it's not being taken more seriously. You know, I work at a student news station up here in Phoenix, and for the first time today, we talked about it on the air. I didn't because I'm not an anchor, but the anchors talked about it. I heard them when I was in the office writing my podcast script, and they were on air discussing. They talked to Tori Lavello, and I think I talked to Robbie Ray about it, and they both kind of had the same reaction I did. Like, we're all for fan interaction. We're all for, fans being able to cheer for their player and be able to, if they come to the sideline, ask for an autograph. But you can't rush the field because it's illegal. That woman is never going to be allowed in Chase Field again. She either served jail time last night and is out now, or is still in jail. And it just incentivizes more people to do it again because, look, once again, another incident. So that's where I get into my final point about this. I think it's okay to talk about this because I think it needs to be addressed in a more serious manner than is being addressed by the biggest voices in the sports world right now. The point I draw the line is when you post pictures and video of the person because that's what gets their name out there. I very specifically did not name the women that did this because A, I don't know their names because I'm not going to go look for them. And B, the point is to get their name out there. They want the attention. You really think they just did that just to see Cody Bellinger up close? That's not it at all. When that woman got taken off the field when I was at the game, she was waving to the crowd. It's for attention. So leave Cody Bellinger and every athlete that's on any playing field at any time alone. They're there to do their job, and you are there to spectate. That's all I have to say on it. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion, obviously. Comment down below. You can message me on Twitter or Facebook, but that's my 2 cents on the story, and we'll see if it continues. Apparently it didn't happen today from what I know, so maybe it's finally over, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll translate to other players on other teams, and it'll be a much bigger concern by the MLB themselves. All right, let's move on to our last big topic of the day, which is the NBA in general. There's a ton going on. Since last week, the NBA awards happened. Just to kind of go over my quick thoughts on those because I just kind of really surface watched them. I believe they were just on in the background while I was doing a homework assignment. But obviously Zion Williamson going at number 1 to the Pelicans, there's no surprise. But I was actually surprised at the kind of emotion that he showed. In that speech after he got drafted, he was very relatable, very emotional, and it tugged at my heartstrings a bit. I'm not going to lie to you. It was pretty surprising how well I connected with what he was saying. Obviously a very good kid, great head on his shoulders. I feel like he is a lot smarter than people give him credit for. They just kind of look at his physique and they look at his basketball skill and they think that he is just this freak phenom, which he is, but I think he's a lot more towards the LeBron James side of a superstar, where he is thinking about the business side of it, the kind of PR side, and I don't like saying PR there because it sounds a little cold, but it is. He wants to build a legacy, not just in basketball, but as a human being, and I really respect that. So congratulations to him, obviously. And yeah, that's the draft. My thoughts on the draft. The rest of it is obviously, that Kobe White reaction to his teammate going at number 11 was awesome as he's being interviewed about being drafted, and then seeing that kind of genuine connection he had with him was really cute. It was fun to see. But moving on from... Oh, actually, one more note on the NBA draft. Can the NFL draft take some notes? I was sitting in the office because work got out. We usually get out around like 4:30, 4:45. And we stayed and watched the first few picks of the draft because we were like, we might as well. There's a bunch of traffic in downtown. We might as well just stay and watch the picks. And they just went so fast. Like, they just get going. They get rolling. They don't care. The NFL, it takes like 10, 11, 12 minutes per pick. and you're 6 picks in after an hour. We were like 6 picks in after like 20 minutes. So please, NFL, I'm begging you to take some notes, because that is a much better viewing experience. As just a fan at home, it's a much better viewing experience. I was much more engaged. I watched it for longer. So I think the NFL can learn a lot from how the NBA does their draft. Moving on from there, the NBA awards were a couple nights ago. They Monday night? Yes, they were on Monday night, because me and my buddies were reading tweets of who won awards instead of watching the awards, because we were at the Diamondbacks game. Take a drink there. Giannis Antetokounmpo wins MVP. I don't disagree with it necessarily. I think that James Harden had just as good a claim to the throne as Giannis did. I do think that the Rockets' tweet after Giannis won was in poor taste, kind of seemed like a sore loser kind of thing. I understand that Harden has gotten the shaft for MVP more times than he's been recognized for it. We were talking about that at the game. The first year that Steph won his MVP, I believe it should have went to Harden. And he has been in consideration a lot and has only won once, obviously. But I think that Giannis had just as good a claim to the MVP title as Harden did, and I don't think there's any need to be a sore loser about it. I think both had stellar individual seasons, and I just don't see the need for the Rockets to be that petty. However, I'm very, very, very happy that Luka Doncic won Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to be a transcendent star in the NBA. And Trae Young had a great end to his rookie year. He got fantastic at the end. He was good at first, but he really, really progressed. I just thought Luka was the more consistent, dominant rookie of the year. And I think that most people agree with me, but I did see quite a few people who said they would rather have Trae Young win Rookie of the Year, which, difference of opinion. If you think that, I would love to hear from you in the comments, but I have to say that I disagree. I think Luka was the obvious choice for Rookie of the Year, and I'm glad that he won it. And other things in the NBA, supposedly Jimmy Butler might go to Houston in a trade package. I think that's not a great fit for the Rockets. I don't know if I would go after Jimmy Butler when you're already dealing with some chemistry issues, allegedly, between Chris Paul and James Harden, which we talked about on last week's episode, but adding Jimmy Butler to that fire would be the equivalent of pouring a giant bucket of grease when you want to put out the kitchen fire. But we'll see, man. Hey, I don't think it would work basketball-wise. I don't think it would work chemistry-wise. But it would make every reporter in the NBA, and especially any beat writer for the Rockets, so very excited to cover the team, because you would get just story upon story upon story. It'd be a very, very interesting prospect, that's for sure. And then final thing on the NBA that I saw that I want to talk about is it looks like they're looking to reduce the regular season, which I think is a fantastic move. I think the NBA has an issue right now where people don't care about the regular season, which is why I think the NBA awards probably didn't have great ratings, if I had to guess. I don't have any numbers for that, but I would have to guess that the NBA awards don't get that great of ratings. That's just because it's a regular season award where the award show takes place after the championship is won. That doesn't make sense to me. It's like, okay, yeah, I remember Giannis was really good during the regular season, but I haven't seen him play in 3 weeks since his team was eliminated from the playoffs. So I guess that's cool. Like, it just doesn't have the kind of magnitude that it should, I believe, especially when you have moments like Giannis' speech, which was fantastic. That should be right at the end of the regular season before the playoffs start, because that gives him a more genuine reaction, because he just put in all that work, and it's like, yes, I just put in all that work and we're going in the playoffs and there's more to do. It'll make the fans more engaged, because they can, they can be like, ooh, he won the MVP, now let's see how he does in the playoffs, and they'll watch him in the playoffs. I just think it's a great idea to reduce the regular season down, because that could make a bigger window. They could have a window of rest possibly where they could put that award season in. Let's say they reduce the season to 82 right now. Let's say they reduce it to 75. 75 games. They want to do less, I think, but let's say they reduced to 75 games. They're already getting rid of road back-to-backs. They're trying to make those less common, obviously, and they're trying to make the road trips that they have way more player-friendly. So I think it would be great for the NBA. I think it would be good for the NBA awards. I think it would make fans more engaged. You'd have less opportunities to go see your team, so you would probably feel more incentive to actually go to an arena and see the team or watch them on TV during the regular season. And yeah, I think it's a great idea. I would love to see it. Let me know what you guys think. Would you be in favor of the NBA reducing their regular season? Would you not be in favor of it? Why? Obviously, let me know. And that's it for the big stories. Let's move on to the quickies and recommendations. So for those of you that are listening to the first episode, or for those of you that are listening to this episode as your first episode instead of the first episode, this is where I just go over some quick headlines that I've seen today or yesterday where I didn't have time to write a full script to talk about my thoughts or really simmer and think about my thoughts on it. And I recommend stuff to you like songs, movies, video games. If there's a big game coming up that I think you guys should watch, I would tell you about that in this section as well. So let's start off with the quickie news. I did see a headline today that Carmelo Anthony possibly joining the Lakers. If I were a Laker fan, I would be horrified by this, but I'm not. And I still am kind of horrified because I do want the Lakers to succeed. Even though I don't have an NBA team, I do want to see the Lakers succeed just because it's good for the market, it's good for the media, it's good for LeBron, it's good for Anthony Davis, it's good for, I think, basketball when the Lakers are good. So please, Carmelo, stay away. Another headline that I saw that was sadly debunked as I was writing it was Stephen A. Smith, I guess, missed first take yesterday. And he said he was filming a movie, and people were wondering if maybe he was filming Space Jam 2, which I would be so ecstatic for, but sadly is not so. According to him, he says that he wasn't filming it, kind of made a little sarcastic tweet saying that he and LeBron couldn't be in the same room, people couldn't handle it, that kind of stuff. So let's move on to recommendations for the day. I'm currently still working on finishing a book called League of Denial. It's by Mark Fineruwada and Steve Fineru. It's a book, a nonfiction book about how the NFL handled the concussion crisis and the kind of evidence that they buried before, obviously, the whole concussion crisis took place. And it's super interesting, super informative. It's the book that the PBS Frontline documentary was based on, and it's just a fantastic read. If you have time and you can find it somewhere, it's a great read and is very well written. The kind of personal stories that they throw in there of former players is heartbreaking. It's infuriating, and it's just compelling. So I would give it a shot. Other things just to recommend to you guys. Joe Rogan actually did a podcast with Andrew Schultz and Charlamagne the God. All three of those guys are three guys that I watch their content pretty often because I think they all have something really unique to offer to the world. And having all three of them on was a blast to watch. I would recommend it for you. And finally, for my last recommendation, this is going to be a shout out to my little brother Bobby because we actually watch Attack on Titan every week, and we text each other and talk about what we thought about the episode now that I'm caught up. And it is so good, guys. It's so good. I know this is a weird tangent to go on. I know I've recommended you a book about concussions, a podcast with Joe Rogan and Charlamagne the God, and now I'm talking about an anime, but that's just the kind of person I am. And Attack on Titan is so good. It is intriguing, it's political, it's action-based, it's awesome. I don't want to spoil any of it. If you haven't watched any of it, go watch it. It's on Hulu. The first season's on Netflix, but all 3 seasons are on Hulu, and we're in the middle of the 3rd season, getting toward the end of the 3rd season, and Hulu updates the new episodes as they come out. So if you have a chance, please watch Attack on Titan. It is a fantastic series, and I think it only gets better as it goes on, which is surprising because I absolutely loved the first season, but I think it's gotten even better since then. And that's going to do it for episode 2 of the Games We Play podcast. Once again, my name is Brian Brindley, and I need your help if you're willing. Share this podcast with your friends and family, like my page on Facebook at Real Brian Brindley, or follow my Twitter at Brian Brindley. Episodes should be coming weekly. Feel free to comment below, tweet me, or message me on Facebook to suggest topics or make some critiques. I always appreciate the feedback. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening, and tune in next week.